office. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on this morning.
I want to ask you. I know we're going to talk about the sex offender registry, but this case from Parkland, where they've arrested the security guard or the deputy sheriff, I think. He says he was following protocol, and it's old. It seems like it's outdated. Now it's rush the school, try to stop the shooter. But they're saying he was a coward, and he did not go in and chase. Are we ready to put people in jail for the rest of their lives for being cowards? That's a little shaky. What do you think on that?
Well, here's my opinion on that. Depending on what the law says in Florida, he has, as a deputy sheriff, a duty to act.
Oh, he does?
And if he fails to act, again, I don't know Florida law, but that could rise to the level of criminality down there.
Okay.
Now, I suspect, again, I don't know, a regular citizen, one of us in the studio, does not have that duty to act. But he, as a law enforcement officer, is tasked and has that duty to act to protect.
Right.
And if he didn't do so, that may rise to the level of criminality down there.
Interestingly, students seem to be more brave than he was. Students were trying to stop this.
Yeah, that's what it seems to appear that it was.
So by no means is this a guy that his life is kind of ruined. I mean, he's coming off as someone who allowed more people to be killed. But I do find it so if you take on that job, you better be ready to act. Otherwise,
right. That's what you do. You serve and protect.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know the Florida law,
right.
It would appear to me that's what their angle is down there. That hey, you're a sworn deputy sheriff, a sworn police officer,
right?
You took an oath,
right? You took an oath. And you failed to act.
Okay,
and obviously he may have the defense of, "Hey, I was following protocol
right
when I didn't go in,
which
waiting
is what he's
for
saying."
backup.
Yeah,
right.
Meanwhile, it's going to be tough to find a jury that's not going to just hate this guy.
Yeah,
that's
that
for sure.
Will be difficult for the defense attorney when they draw that jury.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the. There's been a lot of talk about the animal abuse registry. And there seems to be around Halloween time a lot of talk about the sex offender registry. But it is something that's available all year long. And talk about that and who's on it, what all the classifications mean.
Well, there are three classifications. There's level 1, level 2, and a level 3 sex offender. Level 3 being the highest sex offender, okay, being the one that has been deemed to reoffend.
Oh, okay.
Right? A high probability of reoffense. And level 2 is a moderate probability of reoffending, and level 1 being the lowest, chance of reoffending. That's all based on the type of crime that's committed, how many victims, was there force used, was there alcohol involved, was there a prior, and it all comes really down to a point system. And when you add up these points, it will tell you whether the person's a level 1, level 2, or level 3.
Got it. And this, of course, is available to the public.
Yes. Yeah.
And you do find it around Halloween time where a lot of people are looking and trying to see. There are even apps out there which you can download, and it'll show you with a little marker sex offenders that are living right in your neighborhood.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on, some would say, especially if you're a level 1, it prohibits them from being constructive members of society. It's humiliating. I mean, what do you say to somebody like that?
Well, look, you've committed some type of crime, some type of sexual crime,
right?
That has put you in that position. Now, with level 1s, and with level 1, 2, and 3, they have to register, meaning register their address, where they're working, any internet address or identifiers. But with level 1s, they can stop registering after 20 years.
Oh, they can.
Okay, yes. 2s and 3s are lifetime registration. And with a level 2, after 30 years, you can petition the court under certain circumstances to stop registering. But this registry is here to protect the public, protect the children.
Right.
Okay, let me give you an example of when we lose track of sex offenders. What happens? Back in 2011, I'm referring to my note here. Up at the Davis Motel, Ms. Linda Turner.
Oh yeah,
right. The person that killed her, Robert Blaney, was a sex offender. He had been in prison for rape. He got out. They lost track of him, and we had a tragic event. That's why.
So he was not on the list here.
I believe he was a registered sex offender. They just lost track of him.
Lost track of him.
Yeah.
So maybe at some point he failed to maybe register a new address or something like that.
He may have just left the area, and they just lost track of him. Sometimes that happens.
And I do say on the sheriff's top 10 list, I'm pretty sure someone was on there for just that very reason, that they had lost track. He had not re-registered after he'd moved, and was being sought after.
Two things on the case you just mentioned. First of all, I can't believe it was 2011. It was that long ago. If I'm not mistaken, didn't he make some claims before he was out? Don't let me out. I'm going to hurt somebody. What can law enforcement or what's the word I want to use?
The
prosecutors?
Courts,
What can the court? Can anybody do in a situation like that where he says I'm going to hurt somebody and then he turns around and he does hurt somebody?
Parole board, even
Yeah. In that instance, I think it was incumbent upon the parole board to take that into consideration when somebody is saying, "Hey, I'm going to reoffend."
Right.
But when he gets out, I think law enforcement or parole officers, have to really clamp down on him, even if it's a weekly check. Now, obviously, this is an aberration in terms of sex offenders. You don't see this, thankfully, often happening. But when somebody is like that, who has professed his ability that he's going to reoffend, you've got to clamp down on him. You've got to maybe have weekly checks. You've got to make sure you know where he is.
The other thing is,
you're bound within the law, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's not like we can say, all right, well, this guy's going for life.
Right. Correct.
So
let me ask you. I understand when someone's on parole, someone checks in with them periodically, whatever. But once you've served your sentence, you're a sex offender, you're not on parole anymore, but you are still required to register. Is there a checking in once a month, once every 6 months? What's that like?
Yeah. I'll give you the Utica example. Investigator Safarajic from Utica Police Department is in charge of the sex offenders. And he routinely goes and stops at their registered addresses to make sure they're living there, make sure they're not, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if not, he tries to find them. And if he doesn't find them, then he may open a criminal matter on them.
Right.
But he does check on them. Same thing with the sheriff's office in the local town and PDs. They try to check on the sex offenders in their jurisdiction.
What do you recommend for employers? I know that I have to say that over the years we have discovered, and oftentimes it comes from a listener. We've discovered that maybe somebody that's become friendly with the program, hanging around. We've discovered they're on the list, and so. What is that supposed to tell us, and what obligation do employers have? Because they might not be volunteering this information to you.
Right. And again, I'm in a criminal realm. That's probably more of a civil matter. But here's what I'm thinking. In terms of employer, an employer has a duty to protect his employees or her employees, okay?
Yeah.
And I know there are background checks that are done that would find such information. And once they have that information, it's incumbent upon the employer to act on it, whether hiring them, not hiring them, terminating them, obviously wholly within the decision making of the employer.
Yeah. And what does it mean if you're on the list? 3, 2, or 1. What does it mean? Are you supposed to stay away from schools? Could it be? Is that in the sentence, or is that all a part of what level you've been charged with?
Well, level
or convicted of?
Level 3 again is the highest, and one of the requirements for level 3 is that they have to register their address every 90 days with local law enforcement. So if you don't, and you could be rearrested, you can be arrested for that. That's E felony, and if it's a second one, it's a D felony.
Okay.
And you're looking at state prison again. And also, you have to register your photograph every year as a level 3. Obviously, people change over time, you know.
Yeah.
But with level 1s and level 2s, you have to register, as I said, for your whole life. And level 1s, it's for a 20-year period.
Got it. All right. Anything else? Anybody? And to search for this, it's easy to find.
You could probably Google it, and it would come up. You know, Sex Offender Registry, New York State.
Okay. All right. Very very interesting stuff. It's just one of those topics that that parents are always worried about for a good reason.
Right. One last thing, Bill. That there is a specific provision in the corrections law, which the Sex Offender Registry is under, that you cannot work on an ice cream truck if you're a sex offender.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah.
So near schools, live near schools, do any of that stuff?
Well,
or is
they tried to prohibit them living near schools, but I believe that was found unconstitutional.
There's a constitutional issue there.
Yeah. And although it might be on the books, it's not enforced.
Okay. So. And then I do want to ask, there is those gray areas. So you have and I'm wondering, is this just the law and it's a cookie cutter situation, or are the courts and prosecutors able to look at each situation individually? And what I mean is, you have the high school, you know, the kid's 18 years old or 17 years old, she's 15 or 16, so all of a sudden the parents find out there's a relationship going on. The kid is just over age. They're in the same circles. Can you talk about that just a little bit? And what happens to that person who ultimately could be charged with and convicted of rape?
Sure. Usually a 17-year-old or 18-year-old would be considered a youthful offender.
Okay.
And as a youthful offender, technically there's no conviction. And because of that, even if he pleaded guilty to some type of misdemeanor or felony, there's no conviction. So they would not be placed on the sex offender registry, because under the youthful offender statute, the conviction is discharged.
Got it. It's something that that boys have to think about.
Yes.
Because now you're 18 and 19 and you're still hanging in the same circles. Yes. And you would be treated differently if you're 18 or 19 years old, I'm assuming.
At 19, yes.
At 19.
18 up to 19, you're considered a youthful offender.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And at 19, you're going to have an issue.
My wife feels guys should be treated as they're just too immature to handle themselves until they're about 50. That's how she feels. That it's something about guys that it takes them a little longer to mature. But these are things that are built in. It's built in a person. It's an urge that they seem to not be able to control. Right?
It's some of them, yes.
Yeah.
Some, there's alcohol or drugs involved. Some, they have this predilection for this type of behavior.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate it.